Alright, my name is Boiling Point, and in this video I'm going to map out my early wipe strategy. This is the third time that I play Tarkov from the beginning of a wipe, so I decided that I was going to make an actual plan for the beginning of next wipe so that I can avoid some of the pitfalls from previous playthroughs. Now, I know that there are many of you out there who have entirely different approaches to the early stages of the wipe. Some of you advocate farming Raiders, Killa or Reshala in order to get your hands on good gear early on. Some enjoy battling it out on customs when it is swarming with PMCs trying to get their quests done, and some have found great looting runs on Shoreline, Interchange or Reserve where you can make big bucks during the gold rush of the early wipe economy. No matter what your approach is, there are always some ways to improve, and that is the goal that I set out with when I started making this guide. I feel certain that we can all agree that the early wipe of Escape from Tarkov is an entirely different beast from what the game becomes just 2 weeks after reset. So this guide is going to focus solely on trying to stay ahead of the wave of other players who are all chasing the same quests and hideout upgrade items. Now, I do realize that some players aren't fussed about quests and just use the flea market, but the majority of players do. In order to benefit from higher level traders and the quest rewards. There are two main reasons that I think it's important to stay ahead of the wave during the early wipe. The first one is that many of the quests become considerably easier. For example, Stir by Skier requires you to kill 3 PMCs using a pistol. If you go for this quest soon after unlocking it, you can go directly to factory and fight very lightly geared PMCs, many of whom are just using pistols as well, which is obviously considerably easier and less frustrating than trying to do this later in the patch when everybody wants to do it. Another example would be Punisher Part 5 by Propor, where you have to kill 10 PMCs while wearing P.E.K.K.A. armor. Now, the P.E.K.K.A. armor is level 2, and it is absolute garbage. It won't stop many rounds from any weapon. But it's considerably less terrible early on when most people are running cheap ammo, guns and armor. If you can get ahead of the wave of players washing through the quest lines, you can also avoid the worst of the congestion that some of the quest lines suffer from. There is nothing more frustrating than having to do a fetch quest when everybody else is also going for the same item or are camping those who do. Like, who hasn't been camped at Big Red? Now, the second reason that you'd want to get ahead of the wave is the massive economical benefits that you can reap. This patch, the price of Bitcoin started very high and then continued climbing to levels that I doubt that BSG had predicted. It upset the economy as anybody who got a full Bitcoin rig was harvesting 2.5 million rubles passively each day. And no matter how bad you are at Tarkov, you can't really run a deficit if you're given 2.4 million every 24 hours. So the price of graphics cards at the beginning of next wipe will hover just above the sale price to trader, and will then explode as more and more players unlock their Bitcoin rigs. I doubt that we will see GPU prices at 1.8 million rubles again, but I feel absolutely certain that you should get ahead of the wave when it comes to graphics cards and buy as many as you can, because the price will only only increase for the next 3 months. There are a few other items that I feel certain will be worth investing in, so unless BSG announces some sort of rework that will affect these items, then you should consider stockpiling them. So the first one is hideout upgrade items. These are by far the most important ones to take note of, as they are required by a huge part of the player base at the beginning of wipe. The next one is water filters. At the beginning of wipe, you should be able to buy them at trader price, which is around 15,000, since nobody needs them without a water collector. Once you get the water collector, it will then convert them into 1.5 super water, which you can sell to trader for 32,000. Each water filter is then worth 32,000 times 1.5, so 48,000 rubles. Now, the price of super water will eventually increase as well, from 32,000 apiece to probably closer to 100,000, as it is used in the production of moonshine. So, one water filter is worth 15,000 at the beginning of wipe, but it will increase in price to 100,000 within a couple of months, which is a 7 times return on investment. Several months might seem like a long-term investment, but realistically speaking, that money would just be sitting around in your stash anyway. So you might as well put it into water filters and pop them in your scav junk box. The third item is sugar. It's very similar to water filters. Traded price of 10,000 early on, which will increase to approximately 70,000 later on. The drawback of sugar is that storage is considerably more expensive, but it is used with soup water in order to distill moonshine, so it's part of the same production process. If you have a whole Dilnik, then you might as well fill it with sugar, is my point. The fourth one is a sit case. Most people prefer having a sit case to a keychain, a key tool, or a documents folder. So the barter components required for a sit case should be considerably cheaper early on. So if you intend to use one or more of these, you can save quite a bit of money by buying the components, stockpiling them until you get the barter trade, and then buying one. The next one is Red Rebel, which same thing as a sit case. If you run reserve a lot, then you're probably going to need a Red Rebel. So stockpiling the barter components is well worth it. This way you can get one as soon as you unlock the barter at a fraction of the price. There are countless crafts where you can reap great rewards by stockpiling some of the crafting items. So my recommendation is to check out the prerequisites for some of these crafts and decide which ones you think will pay off. If you look at these opportunities and decide that you're going for one or more of them, I would recommend that you still invest in yourself in terms of gear, as we all know that there are situations where we would have survived if we only had brought a better gun or a few more grenades. Also consider the size of your stash and how much space you need to move your gear around before you fill it to the brim with water filters. One final recommendation is air filters. They're extremely cheap at the beginning of wipe. You can't really stockpile them, but I would strongly recommend that you run one at all times because they do add a considerable boost to your stamina and strength gains. So I have chosen to focus on getting the hideout upgrades done as quickly as possible, and therefore the route taken is based off of the requirements for the hideout upgrades. This should also prove to be probably the quickest route to level 40, seeing as they're linked. You need to upgrade your traders, and in order to upgrade your traders you need to get to a certain PMC level, so it's the same thing. Now I'm going to go ahead and do us all a favor and assume that the battle plan is far from perfect, but at least this way you know what my goal is, so feel free to let me know if there's anything that can be improved. I created this guide based on my own account, which gets the trader reputation boost from the Edge of Darkness edition. So if you're on a standard account, there are quite likely a fair few missions that you will have to do in addition to the ones that I've listed. So the following missions are therefore necessary if you're on Edge of Darkness. For Therapist, you want to do Shortage and Operation Aquarius Part 1, or Sanitary Standards Part 1 for Med Station Level 3. For Proper, you need to do Debut, Search Mission and Checking for Intelligence Center Level 3. For Mechanic, you need to do Introduction in order to unlock Jaeger, and Gunsmith Part 1, Gunsmith Part 2 or Farming Part 1 for Workbench Level 3. For Skier, you will need to do Supplier and Extortionist for Air Filtering Level 1, and then What's on the Flash Drive, Golden Swag, Chemical Part 1, Friend from the West Part 1 and Part 2 in order to unlock Peacekeeper. For Peacekeeper, you will need to do all of his quests up until the Cult Part 1 for the air filtering unit. For Jaeger, you will have to do Acquaintance, Survivalist Path, Unprotected but Dangerous, Thrifty and Sifchik in order to get Water Collector Level 3. So the trader upgrades typically also include a volume traded requirement. In my opinion, it is worth buying stuff off of the flea market and selling it back to the traders. I would strongly recommend accepting a 10 to 20% loss when doing this, as leveling this up through a normal playthrough will only hold you back. So Therapist will pay flea market price for a lot of different items, such as condensed milk, morphine and adrenaline, so you'll take virtually no loss with her. Proper is a bit tricky, but he will buy weapons and grenades, but I would expect a bit of a loss. I can't actually remember if there's anything in particular which which is worth trading to proper. Mechanic will buy weapons and attachments. You can probably buy low quality weapons off the flea market and sell them back to him without taking too much of a loss. I'm thinking of the like the bolt action Vepr and other low quality weapons that nobody puts on the flea market and expects to make, like weapons that have no rarity basically. So Skier will also buy weapons and attachments, and I believe he will give you decent money for silencers. I believe the 9mm Rotec silencer typically hovers just above the trader price. Peacekeeper will buy diaries and SSDs at flea market price, but you will be receiving dollars in return. Jaeger is also keen on buying weapons, and I believe he typically offers a bit more for scopes. So that's probably what I'd go with him. If anybody has any suggestions on how to improve on any of these traders, then please let me know. Just hit me up in the comment section. Okay, so the actual battle plan is to start running raids at Shoreline, Woods, and Interchange in order to search for gas analyzers, flash drives, keys, Saluas, Iskras, Emilias, and Tall Boy Tushonkas. You'll also need to look for 3M armor, as well as MP133s and Toll's shotguns. When you have the Saluas and the Key for Operation Aquarius Part 1, or the gas analyzers for sanitary standards, you can then start doing quests for Therapist and Proper on customs. But as soon as you're level 5, you should go for Skier's questline all the way up to Friends from the West Part 2 in order to unlock Peacekeeper. Now, some of the quests that are required for the hideout are gated by player level, so if you're gated out of, for example, Skier, just switch over to one of the other required quests until you can continue with the Skier quest line. Then just keep alternating between the required quests until you've completed them all. Peacekeeper has by far the easiest quest line with very large experience rewards, and has also the highest trade reputation requirement. So I'd strongly recommend that you push to complete as many of his quests as possible in order to level up your PNC. The Gunsmith questline for Mechanic is also very easy and is a great way to level your player, but the parts required are high in demand, so this is a rather expensive route. Now, once you've completed all of the quests for the hideouts, you can then choose to just go raiding or to focus on completing the rest of the quests. Personally, I would recommend going for all of the most difficult quests as soon as possible, as your competitive advantage in staying ahead of the wave diminishes as other players start catching up on their economy and the gear that they run. So for the same reason, I would strongly recommend that you start running the best gear that you're comfortable with as soon as possible, as I said, your competitive advantage from getting ahead of everybody else only lasts until other people catch up, so you might as well run your good gear early. So the most difficult quests, in my opinion, the ones that I'd rather just get done with as quickly as possible, are the Punisher Part 4, 5, and 6 by Proper. They all require you to use specific gear to kill PMCs, which is considerably easier when they're all running low tier gear themselves. Setup and Silent Caliber both require you to kill PMCs while using a shotgun, which I would recommend that you combine. So you unlock one of them, you just hold off on it, and then you unlock the second quest. Do them at the same time on the same map. They've got slightly different requirements, but you can basically use the same weapon for both of them. It just has to be silenced, and it has to be on customs, and you get all your kills done in one go. Much rather do that before everybody's running like level 5 armors or above. Shooterborn Heaven requires you to kill 3 PMCs with headshots from over 100 meters, and it doesn't matter if it's day 1 or day 180. If you're using quality ammunition, you will go straight through a level 4 helmet. I would still recommend doing Shooterborn Heaven early, as some maps become rather dead once the initial burst of activity just after wipe dissipates. Shooterborn Heaven also unlocks a level 3 trade for a magazine case from Mechanic level 3, which was 100,000 rubles cheaper than the flea market for about half of last wipe. So these are used in the crafting of junk boxes, which can be sold on the flea market with a 300,000 greater profit if you had not completed Shooterborn Heaven, which is a considerable boost to your passive income. For me personally, the most frustrating quest last wipe was the Tarkov Shooter Part 8, which I think everybody struggled with. It took me about 20 attempts, and it pretty much put me off with the rest of the quests for, I think, 2 months. I got fed up. So unless they increase the PMC count on woods, I'm going to get that one done immediately when there's still a lot of players left, because I'm not spending 20 raids hunting for the third player that I never find. It's the worst. And that's it. That is the entire plan that I'm working with. Hopefully there will be some new content or quests at the beginning of next wipe, especially concerning the new scav boss, and that will have to be incorporated into the plan. But this is it for me this time around. Feel free to hit me up in the comment section if you have any suggestions or some early wipe tips and tricks. I appreciate you guys. Cheers.